Our biblical text is from Psalm 68, verse 6. God places the lonely in families. He sets the prisoners free and gives them joy. Verse 10, your people settled in it, and from your bounty, God, you provided for the poor. This is particularly applicable for the indentured workers who came from Germany and how God enabled them to settle here in the Monckton area. 2 centuries and a half ago, brave families landed on the bank of what was known to the Acadians as the Little Elbow, Le Petit Coude, or to the Mi'kmaq, the river that bends like a bow. The cairn at the bend in the Petitcodiac marks the spot where our forebears landed. That first year in 1766 was marked by hardship and shortages. I invite you to discover the indomitable spirit of these settlers. It can help you to overcome struggles you may be facing today. The subject of this message is Forbearance Overcomes Disappointment. Today, the Moncton Permanent Settlers Association honors our Koppel, Jones, Lutes, Ricker, Summers, Steves, Trites, and Wortman ancestors, along with others. These adventuresome people came with great expectations to the British colony known as Nova Scotia that includes New Brunswick as we know it today. Their struggles in the 18th century were rewarded with the prosperous age of sail in the 19th century and rail in the 20th century. We must not fail in this 21st century so that we may see a third resurgence in Monckton. It will require that we dig into our past. With the same fortitude of our ancestors, we must face and overcome today's obstacles. Here's a glimpse into what the world was like when the permanent settlers arrived in 1766. It was during the American Revolution, a time marked by defiance to an indifferent government that culminated in the War of Independence. On February 20th, 1766, the Pennsylvania Gazette reported that a British sloop or boat outside of Wilmington, North Carolina, had seized a sloop sailing from Philadelphia on the charge of carrying official documents without stamps. That was a means of the British taxing the Americans. In response, local residents threatened to burn a royal man-of-war attempting to deliver stamps to Wilmington, forcing the ship to return to the mouth of the Cape Fear River. It was a frightening and tumultuous time for these families who left Philadelphia. They came to this part of the world to begin a new life and perhaps escape all the clamor. Has the world really changed in 250 years? The American colonies no longer wanted to be part of the British Commonwealth. This is similar to what happened recently. Britain voted to leave the European Union. Ecclesiastes 1:9, what has been will be again. What has been done will be done again. There's nothing new under the sun. There was upheaval, dangers, and power struggles in the days of our forefathers. They survived, and so shall we if we demonstrate the same determination. History gives us a glimpse into what might have been the character of the German families. I'm convinced the quality of fortitude defined them. I invite us to search our hearts, to see if the seeds of courage and determination have borne fruit in our lives today. May we be worthy to bear the surnames, albeit anglicized, of these remarkable individuals. They left their mark in history. These permanent settlers are honored today for their bravery and forbearance. May we be inspired by their still glowing embers of hope and determination to overcome disappointment. If you listen closely, you can hear their voices on the shore calling out words of encouragement to one another. Persevere in the midst of hardship and shortage like they did. Exude confidence and be overcomers like our forebears. These eager families were perhaps buoyed by the hope of land, wealth, and a new life. Their hopes began to sink after settling when they discovered supplies from the landholding company were not going to arrive. A ship sank off Halifax. Benjamin Franklin was one of the company's partners. However, John Hall had spent so much, the others were thinking of withdrawing from the company. Drawing on the recently published book of Les Bowser, The Settlers of Monckton Township, he wrote, "The individual lots in the township had not been surveyed, and the settlers didn't know where to build their houses or plant their crops." Have you ever found yourself in a mess, with people leaving, unable to keep their word, and confusion? Keep listening to find out what our forebears did. I will declare passages of Scripture that will help you to keep your head when everything seems to be in chaos. The family's first winters on the shores of the Petitcodiac were grueling, as documented by several sources. A letter from William Franklin to his father Benjamin Franklin on October 23, 1767 reports, "Mr. Jacob or John Hall, who keeps a tavern at the Wheat Sheaf near Frankfort and has been lately at Nova Scotia with settlers for your company, of which he is likewise a member, complains heavily of the narrow spiritedness and mismanagement of Mr. Hughes and the other members. And the poor people who were left there last fall, and who, as they were not yet able to raise anything for themselves, relied on further support to be brought by Mr. Hall. They were during the whole winter in the greatest distress imaginable, and must inevitably have starved had it not been for Lieutenant Governor Franklin and Captain Houston, an old settler in that province, taking compassion on them. These gentlemen sent them supplies from time to time, in confidence that the company were gentlemen of too much honor not to repay them." How do you respond in the face of adversity and disappointment? If these starving settlers gave up, we would not be here today. Instead, they fought back against the elements. May their courage and determination invigorate you to overcome whatever hardships you may be personally facing today. The landholding company went bankrupt. Not to be daunted by circumstances, these settlers persevered, and we are the benefactors today. The Albert County Museum records the following information. By the late 1700s, the settlers still did not own the land that they lived on. So, following the example of Thomas Calhoun, the settlers in Monckton sued the landowners for breach of contract. The settlers argued that due to the American Revolutionary War, which began in 1775, the settlers could not communicate with or receive financial support from the landowners in the American colonies. The settlers won, and the land was ordered sold. The settlers were given the tracts of land that they lived on as payment for work done on the land and for damages caused by American rebels. With the arrival of the Loyalists in the years to come, the community started by the German settlers would continue to grow as stores were opened and industries such as shipbuilding would begin to prosper. Jacob Treitz was one of the 5 original German families who were contracted by the land company of John Hughes of Philadelphia with Benjamin Franklin. These pioneers settled in what became known as the Moncton Township. The company's representative was John Hall, after whom the creek where they landed is named. The family arrived on a 50-ton sloop called Lovey, named after the daughter of the ship's captain. It is thought Mr. Treitz may have been a blacksmith, since the company initially provided iron bars for forging tools and other items needed for the settlers' survival. The hand-wrought nails that were used in the Treitz house, built around 1775, can still be found in the boards to this day. as nails is an expression we use today. Might I say in this context, tough as the nails still in the trite's house that stands 240 years later. A determination to overcome could cause your legacy to continue even beyond a quarter millennium. Revelation 3:12, and all who are victorious will become pillars in the temple of my God, and they will never have to leave it. And I will write on them the name of my God, and they will be citizens in the city of my God, the new Jerusalem that comes down from heaven from my God. And I will also write on them my new name. I'm confident that I am speaking to a group of tenacious people who are not thwarted by life's disappointments, who face setbacks square in the eye and persevere. Provided you place your faith in Jesus Christ as your Savior, you will last longer than a beam in the trite's house. You will be a pillar in the temple of God for eternity. When people let you down, how does it make you feel? How do you think you would have reacted when the supplies did not come through? Generally, we become angry. Some of us act sullen, and most of us want to retaliate. Ephesians 4:32 instructs us, instead be kind to each other, tender-hearted, forgiving one another, just as God, through Christ, has forgiven you. Our ancestors were in great distress and almost starved that first winter. Our names may be anglicized, but I'm quite certain the same German fortitude and resourcefulness runs through our veins today. I would like to read a letter by surveyor Charles Baker to John Hughes for its historic value. They beg you would let them have some working cattle, some cloth and provisions until they will be able to raise it to themselves, which they think will not be long. I think it is a very great pity that they should be left to suffer so much as they have done ever since they were there, as they are a set of the best settlers in those parts. It has surprised everyone that knew them to see how they have lived since they went there on mostly herbs which they gathered on the marsh in the spring. The British Crown instructed land companies to seek out frugal, laborious, and industrious people who will not only improve and enrich their property, but if need be, pertinaciously defend it. This piece of history gives us a glimpse into the character of our forebears. Not just anyone could come to the colony of Nova Scotia. Most likely they had proven themselves to be hard-working during the time they lived around Philadelphia. We can say with confidence these men and women were hard-working. They faced daunting challenges and overcame them. I believe we can be overcomers too, if we are willing to fight for what we believe in and work hard. Forebears signed the Articles of Agreement. If treaties with First Nations people are regarded as legal binding documents today, this document should be regarded with importance as well. The article reads, "If need be, pertinaciously defend it. Ought we not with equal zest defend Canada from those who would destroy our peaceful, accepting way of life? If need be, tenaciously defend Canada's values of freedom, justice, and equality. We vow this in our national anthem." How do we respond to disappointment and shortages? Those early settlers faced life-threatening hardship. The struggles we face today may not be as grave, however, they are real. What do we do? Here is counsel from 1 Peter chapter 1, verses 5 and following. "For this very reason make every effort to add to your faith goodness, and to goodness knowledge, and to knowledge self-control, and to self-control perseverance, and to perseverance godliness, and to godliness mutual affection, and to mutual affection love. For if you possess these qualities in increasing measure, they will keep you from being ineffective and unproductive in your knowledge of our Lord Jesus Christ." Brunswick is the historical name for the German city of Braunschweig. The county of Brunswick was in Saxony, Germany, and was raised to become the Duchy of Brunswick-Luneburg in 1235. New Brunswick was created as a result of partitioning the British colony of Nova Scotia in 1784. The new colony of New Brunswick was named for the city of Braunschweig and to honor the reigning British monarch, George III. He was concurrently a Duke and Prince-Elector of Brunswick-Luneburg in what is known today as Germany. Braunschweig is the ancestral home of the British monarch George I. His successors comprised the House of Hanover, a royal dynasty. The House of Hanover was formerly named the House of Brunswick-Luneburg. Queen Victoria was of the House of Hanover. Queen Elizabeth II is from the House of Windsor, formerly known as the House of Hanover. The first Hanoverian king of Great Britain, George I, was the reigning Duke of Brunswick-Luneburg. He was made an official Prince-Elector of the Holy Roman Empire in 1708. Subsequently, George I was referred to as Elector of Hanover. Premier Brian Gallant raised eyebrows when he appointed a minister of Celtic affairs. Would it not be equally appropriate for him to name a minister of Germanic affairs, seeing as the province is named after a German town? A gold lion on the red field across the top one-third of our flag represents New Brunswick's ties to both the Brunswick region in Germany and the arms of the British monarch. The name of the province and the flag attest to the Germanic roots of New Brunswick. The majority of the families who landed on the Bend June 3, 1766, came from Germany. They lived over a decade in America in an area where many Germans at the time were congregating. The Pennsylvania Dutch are a cultural group formed by early German-speaking immigrants to Pennsylvania and their descendants. Historically, they have spoken the dialect of German known as Pennsylvania Dutch. In this context, the word Dutch does not refer to the Dutch people or their descendants, but to Deutsch, meaning German. At one time, more than one-third of Pennsylvania's population spoke this language. After the Second World War, use of Pennsylvania German died out in favor of English, except among the more insular and tradition-bound Old Order Amish and Old Order Mennonites. Lunenburg English, or Dutch, as it is sometimes called, is a dialect that has all but died out in Lunenburg County, Nova Scotia. It is English influenced by German. A number of Germans settled in that area more than a decade prior to our ancestors coming to the Bend. 78 residents in the 1953 census listed German as their mother tongue. The issue is not whether we speak English, French, or a German dialect. Rather, it is, as Colossians 4:6 states, "Let your conversation be always full of grace, seasoned with salt, so that you may know how to answer everyone." Records of Chignecto by William Cochrane Milner, 1846 to 1939, collections of the Nova Scotia Historical Society, Volume 15, Halifax, Nova Scotia, William McNabb and Son, 1911, reports the following. One morning a Frenchman came timidly into the settlement that had been repeopled at Petitcodiac. He gave his name as Bellevaux. He alone remained of all the Acadians who occupied farms on the south side of the Petitcodiac. He said that on the approach of the English, his people sought safety in the woods where the English were unable to find them, until one calm morning they were betrayed by the crowing of a rooster. He had subsisted by hunting and fishing. His powder had long been exhausted, but he had managed to exist. He was welcomed and proved a valuable addition to the infant community, which prospered with the years. Most of these families have multiplied enormously. He lived until he was nearly 100 years of age and recollected to the last these events. His descendants are now occupying Bellevaux village. Romans 12, verse 8. If it is possible, as far as depends on you, live at peace with everyone. From the above citation, it appears our German ancestors had no issue with the French. I think it was as much the new German settlers helping Mr. Bellevaux as him helping them. The same source reports that Peter and John Hughes, William Grant, and Clarkson and Company of Philadelphia obtained large grants of land on the Westmoreland side of the Petitcodiac River on condition they find settlers. They made an agreement with the families we have come to honor today. However, the agreement between them seemed never to have been fulfilled, and the settlers obtained judgments against the grantees, sold the lands at the sheriff's sale, purchased them, and became permanent settlers. Knowing where you came from helps you to know where you're going. Teaching our heritage to our children and grandchildren can help them to become well-grounded people. An oak tree with deep roots can stand strong in high winds. Isaiah 61:3c, they will be called oaks of righteousness, a planting of the Lord for the display of his splendor. A sense of self-respect is one of the greatest legacies we can leave for our children, grandchildren, and future generations. For those who maintain genealogical records, are curators of museums, and sit on heritage committees and are genealogists, your work may be unheralded. However, your reward comes from knowing you are helping people discover their roots so they can stand strong during storms. The American Revolution saw a small group of German-American migrants come to Canada. German speakers from New York and Pennsylvania and other areas made up a significant percentage of the United Empire Loyalists. We think of the Loyalists as comprising only people of English descent. We need to realize there were people loyal to the crown of German descent who moved from the U.S. to Canada. I'm not making the conjecture that the permanent settlers of Monckton were Loyalists. However, I can say with utmost confidence the Germanic roots of New Brunswick is grossly underrated. The 250th anniversary festivities of the Steveses and the Permanent Settlers of Monckton Association helped to address this oversight. The Pennsylvania Dutch German settlers who arrived in 1766 helped to re-establish Monckton along with the Acadians who managed to remain or returned after the deportation. Monckton can trace its roots to 1733, when the community known as Le Petit Coude, or the Elbow, began to take shape where the city stands today. By 1766, Pennsylvania Deutsch settlers began farming the area, calling their new home simply the Bend. We German descendants acknowledge not only the French families who helped to found this area, but the Irish, Celtic, Scottish, and Gaelic influences and those of others who make this a wonderful city. Tracing our roots is important. However, working together as Canadians to put Canada first is what matters. God places the lonely in families. He sets the prisoners free and gives them joy. Psalm 68:6. These pioneer families banded together so they would not be lonely and to help one another. We need to band together as Acadians, English, people of Germanic descent, Celts, Scots, and more. We're blessed to live in such a beautiful part of the world. The theme of our message was, forbearance overcomes disappointment. Perseverance and fortitude can be your defining attributes. They were for our forebears. The tenacious permanent settlers of Monckton demonstrated courage, hope, and a will to survive. 1766 to 2016, a quarter millennium later, people of German descent are still showing the same indomitable spirit and determination to overcome.